Kinjal Shah of Blockchain Capital, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
So let's dive right in. I mean, your portfolio, you have a ton of big names. You've got Coinbase in there, OpenSea, Anchorage, a lot of names that are making news recently. I guess the easiest thing to start with is, what are you watching and what's most exciting? In crypto especially, there always tends to be something that feels the most of the moment, and right now we're in like the second NFT boom. But for you, with what you do, trying to invest in the next big thing, where are you looking? What do you see happening down the road?
Yeah, absolutely. So I spend a lot of my time looking at what I call like consumer crypto. So that's anything related to NFTs, DAOs, social tokens, things of that sort. And right now, I think DAOs are really where there's already a lot of attention there, but it's still relatively small, I think, when you zoom out. And I'm looking at a lot of infrastructure and tooling that'll help DAOs scale over time. You know, I kind of think that they're going to help with the coordination and scaling of the entire crypto ecosystem, and so spending a lot of time there.
Wait, I'm glad you said that, because at Decrypt we are working on a media DAO, which is something we've already announced. Just trying to think about how DAOs can kind of spur decentralized media. Any advice for us? And what I'd also ask is, you know, like you said, it's still so small. The people who live in these things, who are in 30 different DAOs, they'll tell you it's the future of companies. I'm not so sure. It's still so early.
Yep.
What do you really think is the potential for how big DAOs can get? There's still a lot of kind of friction there for regular people.
Yeah, absolutely. There's definitely friction there. I think the biggest question is, what do we think of DAOs scaling? Like, what's the metric that defines that? So on one hand, it could be users. It could just be revenue, right? Like, you could be a very small DAO that's managing a lot in your treasury. It could be the way that you engage with your users and how they kind of take a role in the overall organization. So when I think of DAOs, it's like, what are some of the ways that people get into a DAO, and then how do they contribute? Those are the two main friction points, right? Is like, how do you on-ramp, and then how do you continue to contribute and like retain those users? And I think the main way of doing that right now is through some sort of token ownership, right? Some sort of way to say, hey, like, here's your skin in the game, like, you get some tokens and therefore you're more incentivized. So I think that's probably going to be the leading way that DAOs continue to incentivize their growth. And I think even with like a media DAO, there's probably a lot of interesting opportunity for, like, you know, rewarding users or writers by giving them some sort of token or some sort of reward. So that's kind of what I think is going to be the first step.
That's the idea, and that's what we're grappling with. I don't want to spend all our time on DAOs, but just one follow-up there. I mean, the other interesting thing, and for anyone who's watching this who doesn't realize, although most people in crypto do, decentralized autonomous organization, and the whole idea of DAO governance being everyone has a say. But some kind of retort that I'm already hearing is, well, in some cases, it actually does make sense for a few key people to have more of a say, and maybe full decentralization is overrated. And of course, we could apply this to lots of things in crypto, not just DAOs. But do you have a take there on sort of the crypto ideal of decentralization, and now the whole, you know, criticism people get, or companies get, or protocols get is, you know, you're not fully decentralized, you're centralized, and actually some companies or businesses probably do need to be centralized to actually get decision making done.
Yep, absolutely. I mean, I think there's going to be different levels of democratic processes that are put into place, where it's like you delegate the ability to, you know, make decisions around the treasury to a particular committee, and so everybody votes on that committee, but the committee has a particular set of things that they are allowed to do that they don't need to get approval for. So I think to some extent there's going to need to be rules and processes around it. Otherwise, it's just going to become arduous, and the red tape is going to feel like suffocating.
Yeah,
so, yeah.
Absolutely. You guys are in VC. You have such a long portfolio. What's a company that you've invested in? It's a nice opportunity that VCs always like to get, that you think hasn't really gotten enough attention, or is interesting and underrated, has been underreported on, that you think people should start paying attention to?
Yeah, I mean, I think they've been getting some attention, but I'm really excited about Upshot. If you've heard of Upshot before, they're basically a protocol that's working on NFT appraisals, and they have a number of interesting solutions kind of at the intersection of NFT and DeFi, which I think is going to be a really big category. You know, right now we have a lot of NFTs that are just kind of floating around, but there's not a lot you can do with them, and so it's like, you know,
the price goes up.
The price goes up,
yeah.
But thinking about like fractionalization, or potentially NFT-backed lending, or what happens when you actually have better insights into the data behind an NFT collection, like things that help you evaluate them better, potentially monetize them more, and be able to use them in different ways within DeFi, I think is going to be a huge unlock for the entire ecosystem. And so Upshot's working on that, and I'm really excited about it.
That's really interesting about appraisal of NFTs. I mean, let me ask you, you know, we were just talking with Devin Finzer of OpenSea. OpenSea is in your portfolio.
Yep.
do you have something that you say to NFT skeptics? Because, over at Decrypt, we're covering all the different news moments in the NFT space, and I just hear a lot of, still, people saying, I just don't understand how a digital image could sell for $300,000. What do you kind of say to people to try to help them wrap their minds around it?
So this is fairly simple, but I say the value of an NFT is what somebody's willing to pay for it. That's the bottom line. And so markets are decided by the participants, and if somebody says this is worth spending X amount of money, then that's their sort of way of pricing the market. So that's kind of how I think about the pricing angle. And I mean, I can go into more of like how to evaluate an NFT, taking a little bit more of a method. I can't even speak right now. More of like a framework to how to actually evaluate that. But I think when I go to skeptics, I just think of the fact that, there are more ridiculous things that people pay a lot of money for.
That's a good one too. That's a good answer
so it's just, I'm not sure that it's fair to compare it to saying like, oh, this is just a picture. It's really more about like, what can you do with that picture? What does it say to the world? Where can you take it? And I think that's like the big unanswered question around NFTs is, great, like now we have a JPEG and it's it's our profile picture. Like,
it's a status symbol.
It's a status symbol, cool, like it means a lot to the world of Twitter and the world of crypto. But I think there's gonna be so much more to come when it comes to like how you brand your NFTs, where you take them, how you turn them into like physical experiences, and so more to come there for sure.
In what you do, you are often vetting crypto startups, crypto companies. Is this something we should put our money in? And being in the media, we do the same thing. Is this a company that's interesting? Should we cover news about this company? Let's talk about regulation. Is that something that, I mean, it feels like the biggest story right now.
Yeah,
everyone's
absolutely.
talking about, what exactly is the SEC going to do when it comes to crypto companies? It's unclear. Is that something that is getting in your way when you're considering investing in these companies? Or is it something that, is that now one of the top questions that you're asking founders? How are you guys going to navigate regulation?
Yeah, so it's actually been a big focus of ours for the past 4 or 5 years, even beyond that. So we have a regulatory practice. We have our general counsel who sits on our investment team. And so he kind of brings that lens to every investment discussion. So no matter what opportunity we're looking at, we're kind of evaluating on a scale, like what is the potential regulatory, is it a red, yellow, green? Like where do we kind of sit on the spectrum? Because nothing is really completely clear in the world of crypto. So it's really just a matter of like evaluating that spectrum. And then I think the biggest question I ask folks is, do you have a strategy? Like, have you thought about this? I think when folks say, oh, like, we're just gonna kind of see how things play out. I think that's always a little bit more challenging versus like, I have an understanding of the regulatory landscape. I understand where I might kind of fall into it and then have some, potential answers to that. So.
Good way to end. Let's talk about something that you see happening on the horizon that you think not everyone is hip to yet. Like either a misconception in the industry or what you think is next. We talked about, DAOs, NFTs, DeFi, but what is something that not everyone has quite picked up on yet? Because there's always like what's next down the road, which is really your job in venture capital.
Yeah, so one area I'm spending a lot of time thinking about is the role of curation and how we think about curation in decentralized networks. So thinking through any piece of media, any NFT, any market, and how do we curate what is valuable? How do we curate what is the most truthful, reputation, things like that. So spending a lot of time looking at different plays of like decentralized social networks or reputation protocols or ways that we can kind of evaluate who is who online, kind of ties into identity a little bit as well. These are like big questions that have pretty much plagued the entire space for the past 10 years. Yeah. But I think it's coming to a point now where in order to separate noise and signal, we're going to start to need some of these indicators. And so I'm working on some thoughts there and meeting with a lot of teams that are going after this problem, which is exciting. So. Yeah.
And that's really big, of course, for onboarding new people to the space who the whole reason they've kind of stayed away is it just seems either unsafe to them or confusing or shadowy.
Yeah, exactly. It's just unclear what is the home of crypto? Where do I go to get my information? How do I know what's true, what's not? We've just gotten to a point where it's a deluge, so trying to filter through all of it is important.
We think about the same thing at Decrypt.
Yes.
We want to be a source for people of trust. Kinjal Shah, thanks for talking to us.
Thank you.
Great stuff.
Thank you.